Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. There's something about this beat that just makes you bob your head involuntarily. And I'm pretty sure you're probably doing the same too. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is James, and I'm the host of the JW Free Podcast, where the JW stands for Jehovah's Witness. And yes, I am a former Jehovah's Witness, and we're going to be covering some pretty heavy stuff on this podcast. We're going to get deep into the indoctrination process of this religion, especially for those who were born into it out of the gate, and what it does to your value system within yourself, and how it shapes as you transition into adulthood, how it shapes your view of the world and yourself. And I'm going to couple that with discussions about personalities, personality types, personality disorders. This isn't something I've heard talked a lot about with regard to this religion. And because I asked myself the question, what types of people would go down to the headquarters to support them, knowing full well what their curriculum is doing to families and individuals, right? Knowing good and well that it's damaging people en masse. What types of personalities are these? So that's an area I want to talk about, because I believe in my lifetime, I'm pretty sure we all have. I've run into some of the more difficult people in the world, and it changes the way you see things. And so I think it's something that we should link in terms of the Jehovah's Witness religion. And before we get into that, I want to give a shout and a welcome to 3 groups of people that I know are here. First and foremost, I want to thank the Jehovah's Witnesses, the current Jehovah's Witnesses who are physically in but mentally out. Congratulations. You are doing what your brain is supposed to do. It means you're thinking about stuff, you're hashing it over, you're getting, hopefully, other sources of information, and something isn't sitting right with you. Because if it were, you wouldn't be in here, right? And there's no way that the God you serve would give you an apparatus, the brain, to do just that. Sift things through, reason, ask questions, and then turn around and outcast you for it. Okay? And I'm not making light. I know you have a lot to consider. I know you have your family who may or may not leave you. It doesn't happen in all instances, but many people have to go through that. So I understand. I'm not making light of your situation. I just think ultimately you're either going to be happy living with you and the new people that come into your life after you disconnect, or you're going to live miserable with your family until they catch up, if they ever do. So, but I'm glad you're here, and hopefully we can, give you some information that helps you make your decision the right one for you. And to the former Jehovah's Witnesses, welcome. I hope the information helps you on your Instagram page, your podcast, your YouTube channel, whatever avenue you're using to shed light on this unwholesome beast. I hope I help. And lastly, those of you who are here to just hear something new, or you have friends that are witnesses, or you're thinking about becoming a Jehovah's Witnesses, I hope and pray that the information I give you helps you make a really sound decision. Okay? And with that being said, let's get right into it. As I mentioned, I am a former Jehovah's Witness. I am one of 6 kids. I was actually the first one born. I was actually in the womb when my mother received the knock on the door. And to this day, I wish they would have just peeked and hid behind the curtains like I saw people do a million times when I showed up at their door. It has been a huge source of contention for my mother and I my entire life until she passed away. And sidebar, both of my parents are deceased, so when I talk about them, it isn't to disparage or disrespect. It's just simply to talk about my life the way I saw it. They were excellent home givers. We never went without my entire childhood, so this isn't about that. And I have to say that for the contrarians who are lurking and looking to nitpick, but my parents were great. Their only error was choosing this diseased creed, and it was huge. And so my mother and we used to battle, and when it was time to study the material in preparation for the meeting the next day, we would go at it. I mean, she would punch and slap, and she would pinch, and she would grab a chunk of skin and turn it and trying to make me conform. as a child, right? And I wouldn't. I just couldn't. And before she passed away, think about what that's doing to the relationship between me and my mother, first and foremost. But before she passed away, she had pancreatic cancer. And I was sitting bedside with her, and she was right at that stage to where she was going to drift into a coma. And she asked me, "Son, did I raise you the right way as a Jehovah's Witness?" And my extreme hatred for this book publishing company would not allow me to answer her in the affirmative, to send her off on her way with what she needed. I can only speculate as to why she asked me that, right? But I couldn't do it. And I don't need you guys to beat me up over that. I have done enough of that, trust me, over the last 13 years. This is a secret I've held on to. Not even my other brothers and sisters are aware of this. But I've held on to it, and I've done enough tearing myself up about it. I've grown, and it's time to release it, put it in the atmosphere with the hope that it helps someone else, right? So ultimately, what am I even telling you this story for? One of the things that this religion does is it separates and divides families. It separates those of us who are thinking from those of us who are just passively accepting their philosophy, right? I have no idea what it is like to have a mother-son bond like I've seen many men have with their mothers. One thing my girlfriends can never do is tell you that I'm a mama's boy. I promise you that, But that's one of the things that it does. And in addition to that, you're always processing or in the middle of negative, never-ending doomsday scenarios. The crux of their belief system is that Jehovah, which is the name of their God, is going to one day, and this day is always imminent, right? One day bring about Armageddon, which is where Jehovah destroys all of the people who are not Jehovah's Witnesses. He kills them and gets rid of all of the organizations that populate the earth so that he can make what they call a paradise earth. But you're always waiting for that complete and utter annihilation being just around the corner. It's right here. It's tomorrow. It's next week, right? And you add to that, their no blood policy where, if you, as a Jehovah's Witness, if you find yourself in a medical emergency and you need to get a blood transfusion, they are instructed in their periodicals from the podium to say, "No, let me die here," right? This is for adults and children. They're waiting to do this to prove their loyalty to Jehovah, their God. And lastly, you are always having to contemplate not being prepared for being an adult. Because one of the things that they tell you is that you will, by the time you're grown, at least during my time, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, by the time you grow up, God's new system will be here. So there's no need to prepare for college. There's no need to think about finding a career for yourself. They look down and frown upon chasing material or financial success. So these 4 umbrellas is what the Jehovah's Witness child is being born into. And now that we know that fetuses respond to outside stimuli in some way, shape, or form, being the first child into this in my family to be born into it, this is what I am responding to in some way in my mother's belly before I even touch down. As a parent who is not a Jehovah's Witness and you're thinking about becoming a Jehovah's Witness, this should have you running for the hills, because they're not going to tell you these things right up front. You're not going to find out, like most of us, until you're an adult, what this really does to you, right? So I'm going to ask you this question again. What types of people, what types of personalities are heading down to the Jehovah's Witness headquarters and saying, I want to sign up and support this type of curriculum? You got to wonder about that. And in my estimation, the only people who are equipped to do that long term are toxic personalities, people who enjoy having the power to destroy and cause chaos and diminish other human beings. This is what they live for, right? And of course, we're talking about the psychopath, the narcissist, the sociopath. But I also think we should add some of the lesser used names as well, like antagonists and authoritarians and all those kinds of people, right? Even the ones that I haven't named, can't recall right now. All those people get off on causing destruction. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to give you a book. And I'm going to do things like this throughout all of my podcasts to help drive the point home, give you some talking points when you're reaching out to other people. And because I think it's necessary to have, have different tidbits of information that may suit your style of storytelling, okay? But the name of this book is called Confessions of a Sociopath, A Life Spent Hiding in Plain Sight. This is written by a female named M.E. Thomas. This is her alias, M.E. Thomas. And according to her book, she is a clinically diagnosed sociopath. So this is official, okay? And I'm going to read to you a paragraph from a chapter called Emotions and the Fine Art of Ruining People. I'm going to say that one more time. Emotions and the Fine Art of Ruining People. And she states, ruining people. I love the way the phrase rolls around on my tongue and inside my mouth. Ruining people is delicious. We're all hungry empaths and sociopaths. We want to consume. Sociopaths are uniformly hungry for power. Power is all that I have really cared about in my life. Physical power, the power of being desired or admired. Destructive power, knowledge, invisible influence. I wish I could tell stories of ruining people, but they are the stories most likely to get me sued. Situations that involve the police, restraining orders, and personal lives derailed. End quote. Is this registering? Okay. Now, does this mean that the Jehovah's Witness headquarters is full of sociopaths, psychopaths, and all the rest of those guys? No, of course not. There may not be any there at all. Right? But if I'm being honest with myself, and this is just my thoughts, my theory, if I'm being honest with myself, at the very minimum, there is a atmosphere of toxic activity. At the very least, if I'm being honest. And of course, there are probably some toxic people there. Which kinds, we don't know. But ultimately, they're all the same. That's why I read that to you. They're all the same. All they want to do is destroy. And I think it's important for us to understand their mindset because clearly they understand ours. At least our parents, for those who are born into